You write a word wrong, flip the pencil, rub a few times, and the mistake is gone. It is such a small and familiar gesture that most people never stop to think about what they are really seeing. An eraser seems almost too ordinary to deserve attention. It is small, soft, quiet, and easy to ignore. It appears to do one simple thing: make a mark disappear. But that is already a little false. The pencil mark is not the only thing being removed. Every time you erase, part of the eraser disappears too. It breaks away, leaves crumbs behind, and gives up a little of itself to pull the mark from the page. So what really allows an eraser to remove pencil marks? And why does such a small object need so much history, chemistry, and material design behind it? Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. A small object solving a delicate problem. Once you look more closely, an eraser stops being a harmless little block and starts looking like a carefully tuned material. Its job is deceptively delicate. It has to grip graphite firmly enough to lift it off the paper, but not attack the paper so aggressively that the surface is ruined in the process. If it is too hard, it scratches fibers and leaves damage behind. If it is too slick, it slides over the mark without really taking hold. If it is too durable, it resists breaking down in the way a good eraser needs to. If it is too weak, it falls apart before it can do much of anything. A useful eraser lives in a narrow balance between softness, grip, friction, crumbling, and durability. That balance is what makes it work. And once you see the eraser that way, the next question is where that balance came from in the first place. Before erasers, there was rubber. Long before erasers were engineered, people discovered that certain natural materials could rub pencil marks away. In 1736, a French explorer noticed indigenous people in South America using tree resin to make bouncing balls. When that material reached Europe, people discovered that it could also remove pencil marks from paper. That is where the word rubber comes from. It was named less for what it was than for what it could do. Even in that early form, the appeal was obvious. A pencil mark may seem minor, but the ability to undo one changes the whole feeling of writing. It turns hesitation into something less permanent. It makes trial and error easier to live with. What mattered was not that the line had been written, but that it no longer had to stay. That alone made it valuable. It softened the risk of writing. But at first, this was still only a useful discovery, not a refined tool. People had found a substance that could rub marks away, but they had not yet found a way to make that ability stable, predictable, and truly practical for everyday use. The first useful material still was not good enough. Raw rubber could erase, but it came with a serious weakness. It did not age well. Over time, it could rot, degrade, and become unreliable. That matters more than it first sounds, because a material does not become an everyday object just because it works once. It has to keep working after storage, after heat, after handling, after time. It has to behave in a controlled way. Early rubber could remove a mark, but it was still too unstable to become the dependable eraser people now take for granted. The turning point came a century later, when Charles Goodyear developed vulcanization, a curing process that made rubber far more durable and useful. That is the moment this story stops being about a lucky natural material and becomes a story about chemistry, control, and design. A modern eraser is less like a piece of rubber and more like a tuned recipe. A modern eraser may look simple, but it is closer to a recipe than a raw substance. The familiar pink eraser is usually made from synthetic rubber. White erasers are often made from flexible vinyl. But even the pink kind is not just rubber in any ordinary sense. It is a blend of ingredients chosen for behavior. In the factory, manufacturers combine the base material with sulfur as a curing agent, accelerators that help the sulfur do its job, oils that influence softness and breakdown, fillers that shape texture and consistency, and colorants that give the eraser its identity. The transcript even points to calcium carbonate as one such filler, and to both regular vegetable oil and vulcanized vegetable oil as key parts of the mix. In other words, the eraser is formulated, not merely shaped. The point is not simply to make a neat pink block. It is to tune elasticity, friction, grip, crumble, and feel until the material behaves just right in the hand and on the page. That is why the production process matters. The machines are not the point. The behavior is. The production line is really a way of controlling how the eraser will behave on paper. The process begins by feeding the rubber through large heated rollers. That milling softens the material and works everything together until the mixture becomes hot, smooth, and heavy, almost like dough. Even defective erasers from the previous run can be thrown back in and recycled into the new batch. Sulfur goes in, accelerators go in, red coloring goes in. Then come vulcanized vegetable oil, regular vegetable oil, and calcium carbonate. The material is blended for several minutes until the color and thickness feel right. Workers judge the batch by sight and feel as much as by formula, because the material has to look right before it can erase right. Then it is taken out and left to cool and harden at room temperature for about half a day. After that, workers cut it into large squares, sometimes weighing 5 to 8 kilograms depending on the order. Those squares go into a steam-heated press, where they cure under pressure for about 20 minutes at 163 degrees Celsius. Heat hardens them. Pressure compacts them. The excess is trimmed away, and the hot rubber is submerged in cold water so the curing stops at the right moment. Later, the erasers are cut into strips, chopped into individual pieces, tumbled for hours with talc so they do not stick together, and rounded off by abrasion before a machine finally stamps them with a company name and model number. Every step exists to control texture, hardness, stability, feel, and performance. One eraser, two very different jobs. The pink and blue eraser makes that design logic even easier to see. To make a two-color eraser, manufacturers cut beveled strips from two different rubber batches and pair them together before pressing them again. The pink side is for ordinary pencil marks. The blue side is different. It contains pumice, a gritty material that increases abrasiveness. That extra roughness gives it more bite, which is why it can handle tougher marks, including ink, more effectively. But the gain comes with a cost. The same abrasiveness that helps remove stubborn writing can also rough up the paper, thin the surface, or tear it if used too harshly. So the blue side is not simply the stronger side in some universal sense. It is a more aggressive solution for a narrower problem. That matters because it reveals something deeper about erasers in general. They are not generic blocks of soft material. They are sets of trade-offs, formulated for different marks, different surfaces, and different kinds of damage people are willing to accept. How an eraser really works. The most surprising part of the story comes at the moment of contact. The eraser's ability to work does not come from rubber alone. In the pink eraser described in the transcript, one of the most important ingredients is vulcanized vegetable oil. That is what helps the eraser crumble in the right way when it is rubbed across paper. Those little shavings left behind are not a defect. They are evidence that the mechanism is working. As the eraser wears down, the material grips the graphite particles sitting on and among the paper fibers, then pulls them away with the crumbs. The mark does not vanish by magic, and it is not simply smeared into nothing. It is physically removed. That is why the eraser has to be designed so carefully. It must break down, but not too fast. It must grip, but not gouge. It must sacrifice part of itself, but in a controlled enough way that the page survives with the mistake lifted off it. That is the elegant part. The eraser succeeds not by staying whole, but by accepting its own slow destruction as part of the job. An eraser does not make a mistake vanish. It spends itself to remove it. That is what makes the eraser more interesting the longer you look at it. On the surface, it is just a school supply, a small object people stop noticing after childhood. But inside that small block sits a much larger story. A natural material discovered for what it could do, a problem of decay, a chemical breakthrough in vulcanization, a tuned blend of oils, fillers, colorants, and curing agents, and a manufacturing process built to control how the material behaves under friction. All of that exists for one quiet purpose. An eraser gives a person room to revise. It makes trial, error, and correction easier to live with. It does not truly make a mistake disappear. It removes it by wearing away, by crumbling, by giving up part of itself so the graphite can leave the page. A tiny object, familiar enough to overlook, turns out to embody a very human idea. Sometimes fixing a mistake depends on something else being willing to spend itself in the process. If something as ordinary as an eraser can hold this much history, chemistry, and design, then everyday life is probably full of stories we stop seeing too soon. Subscribe to Secrets of Simple Things for more stories hidden inside the familiar objects around you, and for more reminders that simple things are often doing far more work and carrying far more meaning than they first appear to at first glance.